Hello, Internet, and welcome back to another episode of Kopitiam Council. And this time we're going to talk about the man that we always talk about on Kopitiam Council, which is Vladimir Putin. And recently he made a visit to North Korea and also Vietnam. And then he ended up his Asia tour. So, Adi, where would you like to start?
Yeah, let's start with the visit to Pyongyang because I think a lot of people seen some of the memes, and then I think the Top Gear new episode looking very good because there was a picture of Vladimir Putin with Kim Jong in the
Aurus.
car, in driving together in the car. So I was like, oh wow, Top Gear new episode coming out.
Yeah.
But regardless, jokes aside, it's a very interesting visit as well because historically, Russia and North Korea's relationship seems to not really be on the forefront of discussion. It's rarely ever talked about. Um, but anytime a world leader makes a visit to Pyongyang, it's always going to be making a big news. I mean, when Trump had discussion with North Korea and South Korea, that made the headlines for weeks, and a lot of discussion was brought about that. And I think it's just the same for Putin, given that he is a world leader for a very powerful country in Russia, and the ongoing situation that's happening in Ukraine makes this a very um, a topic that can be very very juicy for a lot of people who are concerned with Russia's situation. So why I think this is interesting is because Russia has been subject to all kinds of sanctions, and due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, where Russia is still continuing its offensive and annexing parts of eastern Ukraine. So the West seems already, I think, unanimous at this point, has decided to make a stand against Russia, and this kind of reminiscent to a Cold War scenario back when it was NATO versus the Soviet Union. So it kind of mirrors that. So in that sense, I think this is where Russia needs to fall back on getting allies to support it, getting back support from unconventional means from the most unlikeliest of places. And it just seems that North Korea would be a choice because North Korea has always been quite critical of the West, NATO, even historically speaking, they've always taken that stance. So I think this is where a strategic move by Putin to attract North Korea and North Korean leadership over to support them, because now that Russia has been locked out by the West, Russia has avert its gaze towards Asia. It's strengthening its relationship with China in terms of the energy industry, and I think North Korea offers a promising prospect for Russia in terms of, let's say, cheap labor, or even ballistics weaponry, stuff like that. Whatever North Korea manufactures can give to Russia, it's very beneficial for Moscow, for Putin himself. So I think that is the main thing to look at. But at the same time, it does lead into a lot of pitfalls, because by supporting, if any kind of support is shown to North Korea, any kind of cooperation is done with North Korea, South Korea will not be sitting idly by for that to happen, because South Korea, of course, we know the contentious issue between North and South. So support for North Korea would mean that South Korea would have to react to it. And I think this reaction would come in the form of South Korea moving towards supporting Ukraine even more to counterbalance Russia and North Korea. So that would be, I think, the backlash that could ensue. And at the same time, it would give a lot of paranoia for the Western powers, NATO, or any other country that is against Ukraine. Because now, if North Korea is on the side of Russia, anything North Korea does, a lot of people get paranoid. A lot of states tends to get paranoid about it. So this would add even more paranoia, especially when it comes to NATO aligned countries such as Japan, which is very close to North Korea, close proximity. Like Japan, they have those warning systems for any ballistic missiles tests that North Korea is committing. So that is something that would shake up a bit of the theater of countries that are supporting or against Russia itself. So those are the consequences I would see with this kind of move.
Yeah, I mean, South Korea already made a statement that they're contemplating to send some missiles to Ukraine. So that's an implication to but I think that's by design. That's what the Putin wants. But I will talk that later because this highlight of the visit to Pyongyang is that the agreement of defense pact. This is not a new agreement. This is a rejuvenation of the 1961 agreement, defense pact that already they have. I think in 2012 it was nullified and then bring back again. So this is the defense pact where either in any country in this pact attack, it will be a defense together. So of course, this is no secret that North Korea has been supplying missiles and weapons, ammunitions to Russia to 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 support their war in Ukraine. But in terms of this defense pact, it just shows that because people tend to forget that they also share border with North Korea here. So near the Vladivostok, the Asian of Russia there. So I think this is more interestingly in terms of how North Korea will benefit from this, because in terms of Russia, there's only one thing and one thing only. It's just about military support that they need. They need more ammunition. They need whatever more power. But what worrying to the West is that will Russia actually give their nuclear technology to United to North Korea to refine their nuclear prowess? Like we know that Russia has the most nuclear warhead in the world, even more than America, and this is somewhat become a nightmare to America, knowing that if I I doubt it, and I think it's very unlikely that Russia would share their certain recipe for nuclear prowess. But I think in the event that Putin said, "Hey, screw it, I need more allies, and this is the way that I can secure the future," because the Western already promised that they want the annihilation of Russia, so that they can maintain peace in in East Europe. So in that sense, it would become a scary. Even now, we're already scared of, like you said, like there's a lot of paranoia when every time Kim Jong Un decided to test their missiles warhead, it's just flying it over Japan without any warning whatsoever, and Japan just freak out about it. And can you imagine if they have the nuclear warheads, the amount that Russia has, or even the technology that they have? So it will be something very very dangerous for the Western powers to play their chess on the board. But going back to the South Korea wants to retaliate in terms of feeding Ukraine more of their missiles, is that I think this is Russia here trying to make United States and their allies busy. Now in the Europe, they already, France, Germany, they're already like going against each other. Like, should we do this? Should we not do that? Sanction all this, sanction all that. And the allies in Asia as well. It's very important because in the world right now seeing two wars right now, the one in Ukraine and the one in Palestine. So this will make United States even more busier to handle all this, especially the allies, with the threats that they have, the local threats they have, especially for Japan and South Korea. So in the event of tensions getting very very worse, this will become some sort of like a bombardment of that Russia can just flick a switch, then they can just like overpowered America in terms of like, you cannot be present at two places at one time. So that's where I think the strategy is for the Russia that keep America busy on others few things in the Taiwan issues, in the Palestine issues, and also in Ukraine issues. Because ultimately, what Russia wants, what Putin wants, is that Russia still exists the next 50, 100 years. But what US wants is dominance of the world. They want to maintain their grip on the world. So which one is the harder to achieve? So I think it's very obvious that Russia is on a linear path, and America is climbing even higher than Mount Everest here, if you want to use that analogy. And another thing that we can see from this visit is that how it is a win-win situation, especially for North Korea, because we don't see the whole agreement or treaty being signed, but one of the things that we can be confirmed with satellite images is that the shipment of food. So with all of this, there's no way North Korea would say no to all of this, with all the goodness that, with the sanction that all they have. It would be such a huge relief to all the North Koreans that maybe starvations in even in Pyongyang. So this will be a good call for the Kim Jong Un to receive Putin, and a deal is a deal, whether you like it or not, because all that Kim Jong Un wants is to protect their national interests. And what are their national interests? Is to survive with all of the sanctions that being opposed to them. So and it's also giving them a because I think 90% of trade for North Korea is with China. So having Russia on itself, it will reduce the dependency on Chinese, so that it would have some sort of effect to Beijing as well. They're thinking like, hey, we are no longer your, or like staying loyal to us. But I think Beijing will react differently as well, because this is something that sometimes North Korea is out of hand in terms of how China wants to deal with them. They even make all this mess, and China have to clean up after them. So I think it's something that welcome as well. But as long as that nothing too drastic, I think Xi Jinping will okay with that. Should we move on to Vietnam?
Yeah, just before we do, I mean,
Mhm.
it's going to be awkward for China because North Korea has been their most closest ally historically and even till now. So, how will they feel envious with this relationship, this new cooperation between Russia and North Korea? Time will tell, because China is yet to make any statement on that. So, moving to Vietnam. Well, I mean, Vietnam always likes to play the whole bamboo diplomacy tactic, which is that they sway according to the wind, but it never really wants to take a side. So it's they like to be friends with everybody essentially, maybe except China, because the conservative South China Sea. But Russia and Vietnam has had a long relationship, and this dates back to when Vietnam was sent to take down the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. So Russia supported them in that regard. So it's very close knit relationship. But at the same time, if that and Putin does go down there and says all these nice things about Vietnam, saying that, oh, I'm very happy and very impressed and ecstatic by the enthusiasm that Vietnam has shown, then all eyes on that were on North Korea will also be on the Vietnam as well. So is Vietnam going to be taking any sides here? Because Vietnam does act as quite a considerable middle power that would of great interest to not just the West but to China as well. China would have to be thinking, oh, okay, Russia is kind of in our backyard, so to speak, and doing all these nice things for all these other countries here. So this puts it in a situation where Vietnam would have to kind of define itself in these new waters, because if cooperation will continue with Russia in a way that is very intimate, then that would look very scary for the West. Like, oh, okay, a middle power that is very essential in the region in Southeast Asia would be, how do you say, not conducive to their Indo-Pacific ambitions. So that is something that they will take a look at. But at the same time, Putin's Southeast Asia visit to Vietnam is kind of like mirroring Zelensky's visit to Singapore, where he gave a speech in the Q&A session at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore a few weeks back. So it's like everyone racing to see who can get the support from as many partners as they can. So of course, Zelensky has the backing of the West, so he came with that baggage. Russia came with the baggage that said, okay, well, the West doesn't want to play with us anymore because of things that we've done. So it's a race to see who to get allies from. It's just that with always the underpinning factor to consider when engaging in this region is China. So how would China respond would kind of set the tone of how these engagements. If China has no issue, then I think Putin will continue to make all these visits across Southeast Asia, especially to former socialist countries, former communist regimes. But who knows also, will we see Putin in Malaysia? Because a lot of some of our military hardware does come from Russia. A lot of the Royal Air Force, the fighter jets, are of Russian imports. So Putin coming to Malaysia, who knows? Can we get him on Kopitiam Council to ask him a few questions?
That's very,
And
very, very unlikely.
very unlikely. But I can imagine if
Never
we
say
ask him
never.
about. Never say never. I'm sure if we ask him a question, he'll go just like the Tucker Carlson interview. He'll go on a whole like historical lesson, historical lecture. But that is.
If he say yes, we will learn Russians right away.
So just make things easier for him. But I mean, Russia acting in the region would also have to involve China in the conversation. China is the looming shadow as Russia tries to involve themselves in the region. So, what do you think of this?
All right. I think no other country can claim that they're being visited by Biden, Xi Jinping, and Putin in the same year. So this is a moment where it's like the most eligible bachelor now. Vietnam, America wants to woo Vietnam and whatever. And Vietnam, like you said, the bamboo diplomacy is this. You want to be seen as powerful, strong, but you also be very nimble, very flexible also. So this is what Vietnam do best, and by hosting all this three big country, welcoming to them is just it's unheard of. Apart from that we can see also this is more of economic visit here, and also this is actually separate from the North Korea, but because of the timing where it's just a day before North Korea was, Putin was in North Korea. So it seems like, they're drawing some parallels with the North Korea on the before, and then going to Vietnam. So sort of like this is a different, same topic or same coalition, but actually it's not. It's just coincidence that a day before Putin was in North Korea. But more importantly, what being discussed is in Vietnam and being signed, and commitment from Putin is the investment on the LNG in terms of energy sector. So there's a lot of commitment here that wants to develop an investment into Vietnam. So this is Russia wants to find some sort of a different player now in the market, where they already burned bridge. Some of the European partners already burned bridges with Russian, and more importantly, Adi, the visit to Vietnam compared to the North Korea is that it shows that Russia is not in isolation. Yeah, people says that the Western countries is just 20% of the world countries, but these are the biggest countries in the world, so these 20 countries. So this isolation works in that way. And from the perspective of the Western hegemony, that this visit will show to the world that Putin still has allies and they are doing very, very well. It's just maybe, it's not the same as North Korea, because we all know that North Korea is always the BFF of Russia. So it's nothing spectacular about that. But the visit to Vietnam the significance is more than ever. But again, like in North Korea, this is a win-win situation as well, where Russia can show that he has friends, and Vietnam will get a lot of investment from Russia. Like you mentioned, a lot of students also in Vietnam studying in Russia. So these are the more of a cultural, social, diplomatic exchange, if you may. So that the progress that have, yeah, Vietnam brought itself as the allies of Western just very recently, but also shows that, hey, we don't pick sides here. All we want to do is do business. So if you mean business, come here and we will welcome you. So no nonsense from Vietnamese, especially using Russia as a some sort of a calling a big brother, come help me because of this South China Sea claim by China. So I think it, like North Korea as well, there's a lot of win for these two countries, especially compared to Russia. But I think the significance still goes to Russia.
Yeah, and definitely it's more like Russia setting. I mean, if you look at the West's strategy when it comes to containing Russia, it's not too different than when they tried to contain Iran with all these sanctions because they don't want to give Iran all these opportunities. However, you cannot apply that same strategy because Russia just has more global influence than Iran. Iran had major regional influence, but it was never able to penetrate globally. So let's say if Iran wants to seek allies, uh, that's a position like Asia, it would be harder for them to, just because of the relevance that they have outside their region is not measurable compared to Moscow itself. So that is one way, I think, using an archaic strategy for a different context, which Russia does not play by. Russia is a completely different beast altogether, and it's able to flex itself in a way that, like you said, it doesn't have to be a visit of a security disposition or nature of security. It can be economic, it can be diplomatic, it can be cultural, it can be historical as well. So I think that is what Russia is playing into, and I think Russia and China has mastered that in terms of their engagement through the use of not very staunch language, but using, in a way, you can still describe it as a soft power as well. That they're going to, for more cultural reasons, more social reasons, and that it puts the people more at ease compared to, let's say, okay, I'm coming here to form a new security committee to or community to balance out the West. It's a different narrative entirely, and it's more palatable for leaders because you don't need to commit much in terms of international weightage to be part of that. Because, like, okay, let's say any country, like, for example, let's say any country comes to Malaysia or even Sabah, right? They want to exchange cultural values. They want to have all these social exchanges and all that kind of stuff, right? It's of course we're very open to it because it's a way of cooperation. It's a way of diversity, of embracing diversity, and being more relevant on the international stage. So who wouldn't want that? And I think China is very good at that. Russia is also learning how to be how to be very good at employing that kind of soft power strategy. It's just that China has more in terms of soft power to give. Let's say, uh, like a huge Chinese diaspora in Southeast Asia, which they can tap into culturally when it comes to art, literature, music, what have you, entertainment. So Russia would have to develop a soft power that's more different from China because China likes to leverage on its entertainment, leverage on the diaspora that's inhabiting all across the Asian region. So Russia, it will be interesting to see how Russia evolves its soft power posturing, so to speak, within the region. I think, in a way, Putin making his trip to Vietnam is kind of like almost like a test run in a way. Of course, he's made many visits to, himself, like he's a very important world leader, but it's a very significant visit as well in this particular instance because of all the nice things that Putin is saying. Very, very, very friendly, very brotherly messaging and language being used to describe Vietnam. So even though that Vietnam was more close to the Soviet Union back then, but now I think it's trying to, like you say, how do you say, North Korea, rejuvenate, dormant relationships, and I think Russia is doing that in a very social way.
Yeah, just very quickly off tangent here that recently Vice President of Philippines also resigned from the post. This is related in a way that how Philippines now very pro America. During Duterte, it was very pro Chinese. So this is the dynamic that also I think today Vietnam wants to invite Philippines to create like a collaboration so that they can go against China in terms of the issue of South China Sea. I think Malaysia should join this pack as well, might as well, so that there will be more significance of it, because we are also infected in terms of this claim. So you see the internal politics, like what happened in Philippines, has very much to do with what China is doing in the South China Sea. So I think this is a very good timing for Putin to be in Vietnam, and maybe China or Xi Jinping will be more wary when it comes to just bulldozing their way, especially towards the Vietnam side, those Macau, Hong Kong side, and then wants to extend all the way, and then would jeopardize a lot of Vietnamese fishermen that would trying to get resources from those area. I think this is a very interesting topic that we will keep monitoring and going to talk about. Of course, we're going to revisit this again soon when we have a good development. Any last remark from you, Adi?
I think in just when it comes to all these international horse trading in a way, I think we can view it as, how do you say? Of course, sometimes the language may be barbed, but that mostly comes from not the leaders themselves, not the top leaders or the premier leaders. It's always coming from, let's say, the state officials who are not in that position. So that does not always have a huge bearing on the international relationships each country has. At the end of the day, it's still the president or the prime minister's call to decide like how the nation would move forward. I think Duterte in a way was very uh, unorthodox, so very eccentric, because he did, yeah, of course, he, like you say, pro China, but at the same time, at one point he was anti China, and then he would change his stance accordingly. That's a not the norm for when it comes to Southeast Asian leaders, and I think Vietnam is more the norm than the exception as well, in that they want to play to all sides. And I think like you mentioned, the benefit of Russia being involved in the region does help, because Russia and China are quite good friends. I mean, their relationship is quite solid. Then Russia can provide alternative perspective or mediating role in the South China Sea conflict. Maybe if Malaysia can get on it quickly, we could promote the code of conduct for the South China Sea, because that was one of the crowning achievements that we like to tout as when it comes to resolving this issue. Malaysia could lobby with Russia to say, hey, Russia, we have this code of conduct drafted with the Manila summit back then in the last decade. You could tell China about this. You could sort of whisper in Xi Jinping's ear, the premier's ear, and say that, okay, well, now Russia is support. So I mean, this relationship works both ways. As much as Russia would like to gain the assistance and cooperation from Southeast Asian countries, we can also leverage from that need, because Russia, they are backed into a corner, isolated. So we can also take advantage of that. It's not in a malicious way, but also just to, or in a zero-sum game kind of way, but in a way it's cooperative. And I think in Southeast Asia, we're very good at cooperating rather than competing. So we could try to employ those kinds of sensibilities and tell Russia that you want to play in this region, then you have to play by certain particular rules, and we're more than welcome to embrace another player, because ASEAN, we like to expand a lot of our framework and architecture. We have the ARF, the regional forum, the ASEAN pluses, and all stuff like that, just to be more inclusive and get more support as well. So we do the same thing Russia is trying to attempt. It's just on a different issue.
And that's it for the last topic we have for this week. And if you have something that you would like to suggest, please comment down below. If you're listening this on Spotify or on YouTube, please comment down below what would you like us to talk about or guests that you would like us to invite on. So we'll be appreciating so much if you get any feedback to all these new subscribers that we got from our last video. Thank you very much again for that. We can, it's something that we're really, really grateful for that. And if you like short format content, please visit us on Instagram and also TikTok, where we put up short contents at daily basis. And with that, thank you for watching and see you next time.